Unfortunately, this year is very different from our previous campaigning years, and that is because of some unprecedented events. However, this will not stop DOST GAD and Regional Support Service in educating everyone about our rights as women and men. So, before we go on with our program, there are some house rules that we want all of you to take note to make this webinar even more successful. For our house rules, all microphones must be turned off throughout the webinar to avoid unnecessary noise during the session. Now, please check if your mics are now turned off. Okay, thank you very much. For your questions, please write them on the chat box, including your name and agency. The speaker will be answering your queries during the question and answer portion. Please fill out the online attendance form. The link will be available in the chat box. Also, don't forget to answer the online evaluation form at the end of the activity. The link will also be provided in the chat box. And also, please note that this webinar will be recorded and the link will be posted in the DOST Guide webpage. And those are the rules that we must take note throughout the webinar, and we are grateful for your full cooperation. So what are we waiting for? Just sit back, relax, and learn from this webinar. To begin, let us sing the Pambansang Awit, to be followed by a prayer led by Mr. Michael B. Villados, member of the DOST Central Office God Focal Point System.
Noon pa man, malaki na ang naging bahagi ng mga kababaihan sa lipunang Pilipino. Kaisa sila sa marubdob na paghahangad ng kalayaan ng ating lahi. Kabilang sila sa paglinang ng ating makulay na sining at mayamang kultura. Kasapi sila sa pagtataguyod ng mga adhikain ng kapwa mamamayan at sa pagtugon sa mga pangangailangan ng lipunan. Katuwang sila sa pagtuklas sa mga larangan ng agham at medisina. Kapanalig sila sa pagpapairal ng batas, karapatan at katarungan para sa lahat. Kabahagi sila sa paglilingkod sa bayan at sa pagpapanatili ng demokrasyang Pilipino. Sa paglipas ng panahon, hindi nagmaliw ang kanilang pag-ibig sa ating inang bayan. Mga kababayan, ito ang alay ng mga kababaihang Pilipino para sa bayan. Tumayo po tayong lahat at sabay-sabay nating awitin ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Ayaw magiliw, pero sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dilim mo'y buhay. Lupang hiniram, tulad ka ng magiging, sa manlulubi, di ka masisingil. Sa lahat ng lubog, sa sigat at sa langit mong babang, may ginanang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na naglilingin. Ang bituin na araw ng kailan pa may madilim. Lumalang araw ng 100% mo'y nangis sa piling mo. Ang higaya na pag may makahamit, ang mga ray ng dahil sa'yo.
As we observe the 18-day campaign to end violence against women or VAW from November 25th to December 12th, we ask you, Lord, to look with kindness upon all of us who are gathered here. Fill our hearts and minds with love, wisdom, and courage as we face our daily lives. We pray for all women and girls who suffer from domestic violence, rape, incest, sexual harassment, trafficking, prostitution, and other forms of violence. May they have the courage to break their silence, find protection, healing, and justice. We pray for the perpetrators of vow that they may learn to respect women and girls and stop the violence. O loving Father, send us your Spirit so that everything that we do will be done with love and respect for our fellow humans, regardless of age, sex, class, ethnicity, and ability. O powerful God, develop in us a high regard for the thoughts, feelings, and experiences of everyone, and bestow on us the capacity to promote, protect, and fulfill the rights of women and girls. Almighty Creator, grant us the strength to stand up against all forms of violence happening to women and girls, the sharpness to recognize the silent victim of vow, the courage to speak up against vow, the resourcefulness to help a victim of vow, and the resolve to never commit any form of vow. For all of these, we implore your guidance. Amen.
That was a very wonderful prayer. Okay, I know all of you are eager to learn about our topic this morning. So, to welcome us in this very special day, let me introduce the Director of Administrative and Legal Service and God and Regional Support Service and the DOST wide God focal person. Let us welcome Dr. Elizabeth A. Fontanilla.
Hello, hello, and good morning to everyone, to our very able resource person today, and to all our participants from the DOST Central Office and some from the other regions and agencies. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to today's webinar entitled Orientation on the Safe Spaces Act, or RA 11313. For information of everyone, the DOST Central Office is conducting this seminar in observance of the 18-day campaign to end violence against women, or VAW. This is the DOST Central Office's support in 2020 for the Anti-VAW Advocacy Campaign. As you might already know, the Anti-VAW Advocacy Campaign, spearheaded by the Philippine Commission on Women, is being observed in the country annually from November 25 to December 12. This advocacy campaign is in support of the Philippine government's goal to protect the human rights of women and girls by upholding its commitment to address all forms of gender-based violence as enshrined in the 1987 Constitution. One such protection is the Safe Spaces Act. This is the reason for holding this webinar today, which is to learn and be oriented on it. The background, and for background, the RA 11313 is otherwise known as an act defining gender-based sexual harassment in streets, public spaces, online workplaces, and educational or training institutions, providing protective measures and prescribing penalties therefore. The act promotes the policy of the state to value the dignity of every human person and guarantee full respect for human rights. It recognizes that both men and women must have equality, security, and safety, not only in private spaces, but also in the streets, public spaces, online workplaces, and educational and training institutions. Through this webinar, we will know and understand how we can use this law to defend ourselves and other people against sexual harassment, specifically in streets and public spaces. We will also learn the responsibilities of government in protecting both women and men against these unwanted acts. Truly, this webinar is not only important, but will be very useful for each personnel in the DOST in every situation that the personnel happens to be in. Just like you, I'm very eager to learn more about the Safe Spaces Act within the limited time that we have. So without further delay, may I again welcome all our participants to this webinar. I look forward to an enjoyable learning experience with all of you. Thank you, and again, good morning to everyone.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pantanilla, for that welcome remarks. Before we proceed to the session about the Safe Spaces Act, or more popularly known as the Bawal Bastos Law, let us have a short interactive activity to be facilitated by Ms. Maria Fe Bisingson.
Good morning, everyone. So in this session, we're going to watch a short video, and there is a warning which says that this video may contain scenes, photographs, or graphics that may have strong language and theme which may not be suitable for children. While the video is inspired by true stories, the events and characters depicted in the film is purely fictional. Any similarity to person living or dead is merely coincidental. Viewers' discretion is advised. So let's now watch the video, and later on we will have an interactive activity.
Magandang araw ang binungad sa akin ng mundo. Bagong araw ng pakikibaka at paglalakbay, bitbit ang pag-asa at pangarap. Hawak ang positibong pananaw, dalangin ng isang makabuluhang araw at makauwi ng maayos sa aming tahanan. Sa araw-araw na paglalakbay, sa lansangan, sa kali o sa daan, kay ingay-ingay ng mga sasakyan sa pag-ugong at usina. Walang tigil sa paghuni ang mga makina, walang kumpay at hindi dumitigil. Sa bawat kanto, sa bawat kalsada, mapaabanida o maliit na iskinita. Patuloy din ang seksistang pagtingin at pagtrata sa akin. Kailangan mo ba talaga akong batiin ng
Hi Miss, good morning beautiful.
kasabay ng tingin na para bang ako'y hinuhubaran? Kailangan mo ba talaga akong sabihan ng
Hi, ang sexy mo naman Miss.
sabay ngisi at kindat na sapat upang ako'y kabahan? Kailangan mo ba talaga akong sipulan? Kahit tahimik lang akong dumaraan. Ako, si Juana, si Fatima, si Maria, pati si Magdalena, araw-araw na nagtitiis sa ganitong uri ng sistema. Hindi ito musika sa aming mga tenga. Hindi kami nagigiliw o naaaliw. Hindi namin pinangarap ang ganitong lipunan dahil sa bawat bulong, sigaw at alingaungaw, ang tanging hiling namin ay pagkakataon na respeto ay mangibabaw. Binabalot na kami ng takot. May pangamba sa bawat galaw. Naninimbang sa bawat espasyo sapagkat hindi ligtas at hindi sigurado. Tama na ang paghaplos at pagsulyap. Tama na ang pagtitig at pagdantay na parang kami ay inyong pag-aari o laruan. Kailan ba magiging patas ang mundo? Ang sabi ng pabulong ngunit nagngangalit ang tinig ko. Kailan ba magiging malaya at matiwasay ang lipunan na ginagalawan ko? Sana bukas, sa muling pagbungad sa akin ng mundo, wala nang anumang uri ng pang-aabuso.
Okay, so we have seen the violence against women in the street and public places, and it narrates the difficulties a woman gets to experience every day as she crosses the streets and utilizes different forms of transportation in the country. The woman's musings revolve around her disappointments on the old age culture of sexism and patriarchy, still hoping to achieve a more gender fair community in the future. So at this point, please take a look at the chat box. There's a link for slido.com. Have you seen it? Nakita niyo po ba? Slido.com. Kindly open it. Click niyo po. Slido.com. Danica. For what? Slido, yeah, it's there. Slido.com. Kindly click that link. Nakita niyo po? Please say yes sa chat if you've seen it. Okay, good. So the first question. Has the video changed the way you view the day-to-day struggles of Filipino women? Click nyo lang kung yes or no. May sumagot sa chat na yes. Okay, meron din. Yes, yes, yes. Some more, there are only 3 who answered in the Slido. Just click the Slido and then you will be prompted to the question and then sasagot lang kayo, click whether yes or no. Has the video changed your view, the way you view the day-to-day struggles of Filipino women?
That are organizers.
Yes. Yes, walang na sumagot na no. How many are we?
79.
Some more. Nakita niyo po ba ang Slido? Try that website, yung link na yan para ma-ano kayo, maka-experience. 9. Some more. Okay, yes, yes. Hindi, okay, hindi po masagutan. You can answer it, Miss Queenie girl. Okay, i-click nyo lang po ang Slido and then lalabas po yung question. Yes po. Okay. Nakita na. Yes, ma'am. Using the Slido. Okay. Now, can we go to the next question? Kasi mas maganda yung next question. Okay. The second question is, how can you help victims of VAW in public places? How can you help victims of VAW in public places? You can write your answer. In the blank provided. Kung nahirapan pa rin kayo, I'll take a look at the chat. How can you help victims of VAW in public places? Nakita niyo po? There's a problem.
Yes, nakita po ma'am, pero hindi kami makasulat sa Slido.
Hindi kayo makasulat? Bakit dan?
Ano?
Okay naman. There's a blank line. Tama, Danica? You write your answer in the blank line. How can you help victims of VAW in public places? Wala pang sumagot. Then, hindi lang makatype. Hindi makatype? Listen. One answer is listen to and believe survivors. Okay. Makinig. This one answer I received. Listen to and believe survivors. Have you seen the result on the screen? Okay, another answer from from DOST 7. In my own point of view, I think making policies and educating both men and women the value of gender and respect. Very good answer. Another one from Miss LV Sinita. Be a model to others by refraining those bad acts. Okay. Kailangan ikaw yung model. Very good. Some more answer? Sino itong nakasagot dito sa Slido? Sila ang bukod tanging nakasagot. Okay, other answer from Maymay of DOST 7. Report the abusive act to proper authorities. Very good. Another answer, by analyzing first the situation before you act, report it the police or barangay officials. Okay. Assist and refer them to the nearest PNP women's desk. Okay, good answer. By not being silent about witnessed act. Okay, good. Hindi tayo maging bulag at ipi. If you see something, say something. Very good. And yung feelings ng babaeng na victim, you have to sympathize, di ba? So you need to stand and fight with them. Okay, what else? Report to barangay, desk. Know what are the different kinds of abuse and take action if you see any of them, and report to the nearest authority. Talk sincerely to the victim and assist he or she. I like that. He or she, kasi minsan may mga lalaki din na biktima dito, no, na yung mga mga naging trans, no? And reporting to the proper authority. Okay? Sitahin in real time ang nakikita na abuser in public spaces po. Kasi madalas ang victim tumatahimik lang in disbelief din sa nangyayari. O nga, agree ako sa iyo, Miss Queenie. Okay, so let's have, I think, marami na tayong narinig na mga sagot. Raise awareness, very good. Okay, let's go to the third question. Para mabilis tayo kasi the meat of this orientation will be the lecture of our resource person, okay? And then one sagot kay Sir Ruel. Tama, our advocacy is also towards ending violence against with a space men. I like that, Sir Ruel. Okay. Okay, the last question for you to answer. If you were in her shoes, what would you do? Kung kayo ay nasa kanyang kalagayan, what would you do? Yung babaeng biktima ng karahasan, what would you do? You can type in the Slido or you can type in the chat. Okay. I will try to leave the situation ASAP. Tama. Okay. Sinasabihan ko yung lalaki, pakitanggal po yung kamay niyo dyan. Wow! Very, very powerful yun, ha? I will report to the authority and condition my mind to be strong. Okay. Makakababaihan, huwag na tayong magpaapi. I would react to stop the act, report to proper authorities. Ano pa? Ang dami na yung sagot. Parang Attorney Angel, madali mo na lang itong dahil the answers are more or less leading towards your lecture on the Safe Spaces Act. What else? Ano pang sagot? It's easier to ignore. The thing is, it's hard to prove. Provide evidence that my rights were violated. Okay. And then, from Ellen Joy Manikit, speak out. I'll fight for my right so that other victims would take courage to speak out also. O nga. Kasi pag may nakita tayong isang matapang na magsasalita, tayo din ay magkaroon ng lakas to do the same. Another answer, kailangan mag-react sa mga bagay na hindi tama, lalo na sa mga pang-aabuso ng harap-harapan. I agree. Okay. And I will, from Ma'am Beth Alado, I will react to call the attention of others. Okay, very good. So, ang ganda ng mga sagot ninyo na nakikita ko yung mga babae, mga sagot ng babae, palapan. Okay, palaban na palaban. So, um, I think I have to end here at this point because I will not preempt our speaker to explain more about the Safe Spaces Act. So, for those who participated, thank you very much. We appreciate your answers, and it was indeed a very engaging activity. Okay? And then one more answer. Ang gusto ko to kay Jeka. I will react for them to know that I am violated. Okay? So, wag na tayo maging pipi at we need to stand up and fight violence against women. Thank you very much. Camille.
Thank you very much, Tita Fe, for that very interactive activity. Sino po ang nag-enjoy? Sino ang napakita ang tunay na katapangan ng mga kababaihan? Wow, I'm very excited to see all of your reactions mamaya and even your questions na nais mong ibigay kay Attorney Angel. But tayo po ay dadako na sa ating main event dito sa ating webinar. I believe that what we have experienced will ignite our minds to know more about violence against women in order to protect ourselves and encourage others to advocate anti-VAW. So are we ready? Our resource speaker for this morning's session on the Bawal Bastos Law, or RA 11313, the Safe Spaces Act, is a member of the DOST Central Office GAD Focal Point System and the Chief of the Legal Division. Please welcome with a round of applause, Attorney Angeli P. Medalye Alviar. Take it away, Attorney Angel.
Hi, mahirap naman mag-greet sa Tagalog. Anyway, good morning po sa lahat. Nakikita at naririnig niyo po ba ako? Kahit na lang, clap or thumbs up. Just to be sure. Yan, very good. So, habang nag-interactive activity si Tita Fe, I was thinking, paano ko ba simulan to? So, I was very busy preparing the lecture. Hindi ko paano ko isisimulan ang lecture. So, nung tinanong ako ni Tita Fe if I can speak for this webinar, inisip ko agad, although nag-yes ako syempre, pero inisip ko agad, ako ba tamang tao na to lecture? Kasi I have never seen myself as a feminist. Hindi ko rin naisip na I could have been or I have been a victim of VAW or violence against women. Tapos napaisip ako habang naglulupang hinira at prayer si Mike. Biglang nagpa-pop up yung mga scenes ng buhay ko na I can consider na naging in one way or another I have experienced discrimination. So I will share 3. So some of you may say na parang how can you be a victim of violence or at least prejudicial actions from others? Abogado ka naman. Yes, possible po. Pero nung bata ako, i-relate ko lang. Yung bata ako, may English teacher ako, elementary. So ang tanong ko sa kanya, Sir, bakit po ang pronouns na ginagamit natin lagi ay he? He explained to me that we are living in a masculine environment. So I thought that was normal. Siyempre, bata pa naman ako yun. Ano bang alam ko sa mga gender equality? So then growing up, sinabi rin, I was also told by my mom, di pa ako married, na okay lang walang tatay. Basta nandiyan ang nanay. Kasi iba ang nagagawa ng nanay para sa mga anak. I don't know, maybe that would not may be true because may mga special talaga tayo, may special functions ang women. Pero that could be, pwede ko rin tingnan kasi yun na prejudicial din sa role ng lalaki para towards the family. Even nung college ako, ito medyo traumatic. I also experienced physical abuse from a tricycle driver. Syempre, bata pa tayo. Going to the university, the tricycle driver attempted to, in fact, he already touched my leg. So, hindi ko alam kung paano siya, how to react. Parang I got frozen at hindi ako nakagala, hindi ako makasalita, hindi ako makagalaw. Iba pala pag nandoon ka na. So, after na hinawakan niya yung, syempre, siguro may mga minutes, at pinatanggal ko yung kamay niya. He even attempted to touch the side of my boobs. So doon, medyo napasigaw na ako. However, nung bumaba ako, nagbayad pa ako ng pamasahe sa kanya. And I just rushed to, na pumasok sa university. Then umupo ako sa bench at nangatog na lang ako. Ganun pala ang hirap na maging subject ng isang abuse, ng isang sexual or physical abuse. I was raised to be able to talk, to speak for myself, fight for myself. We have always been vocal in the family. We can speak, pero no disrespect lang sa no disrespect sa members of the family, but we can always talk. We can always speak our mind. Pero pag nandun ka na sa situation na yun, you cannot do anything. Nangangatog ka na lang, especially kung bata ka. Because one, we may be afraid of confrontation because our culture is that way. Masyado tayong mabait. And even when I was already a lawyer and I was pregnant with my first son, isa lang palang anak. With my son, I also experienced abuse, or at least the very least violence, or hindi naman ganun ka-violent, pero prejudicial actions or acts from someone. So, it doesn't matter kung anong estado mo sa buhay, at whatever your age may be, or even gender, na to be a victim. Kaya sabi ko, maganda, it's a good time, it's a good venue for me to speak out and to also help people na medyo hindi din handa. Kasi although it's easy for people to say na, ay, paglalaban ko sarili ko, I will speak for myself, I will fight for myself. It's easy for some, but not for all. And even for people na medyo strong ang personality, minsan nagdadalawang isip din to come out, to speak. Maybe one, we don't even know that we are being harassed because sanay tayo na ganun. Lumaki tayo ng ganun na, hey, sexy, oy, attorney, if okay sana sabihan kang sexy. Attorney, lumalaki ka na, diba? Or pwede rin kasi na, ayun, sabi ko kanina, to avoid confrontation, to avoid the inconvenience. Syempre, we have several cases na yung mga victims, sa una medyo malakas pa loob. Pero pagka yun na, they experience victim shaming, they experience the hassle, the threat, the mental and emotional stress, they back out. Kaya importante na may societal community support. The support sa workplace, maramdaman ng mga victims for them to really come out. So, yun. So, tayo ba sa DOST, sapat na ba yung mga ginagawa natin to ensure that our environment, our culture in DOST is enough to say that, one, na pwedeng that we have prevented, we are preventing for violence or sexual harassment to be done to anyone, hindi lang po sa babae, pwedeng sa lalaki, pwede sa transsexual, pwede sa homosexual. So, sapat na ba yung ginagawa natin? So, ito yung mga basic questions na para at the end of the lecture, at the end of the question and answer, isipin natin habang mag-uusap, habang nagdi-discuss natin yung Safe Space Act or Bawal Bastos Act. So, bakit ba ang dami-dami nating laws for to ensure the equality of men and women, or the protection of women and children? Because our laws, back in 1995, we have 7877, anti-sexual harassment. So bakit kailangan pa nitong bagong Safe Space Act? Ito last year lang to. Bakit kailangan? Because our laws are not perfect. Through time, through the dynamism of everything, may mga nagbagong circumstances na lumalabas na hindi covered ng previous law. So, I'll share my slides na po. So the objective of the law is to address the gaps or yung mga scenarios na hindi covered ng 7877. So ito yung because the 11313 is only an expansion of 7877. So meaning the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act of 1995 is still subsisting. It's only that the new law adds more protection. It expanded. Sabi nga ni Director Beth kanina, we already, now we covered na yung mga pambabastos sa streets, sa public places, sa online, gano'n. So may gano'n na kasi sa dating law, wala, kulang. So maybe because hindi lang nung ginawa ang law, 1995, nasa elementary pa po ako, ay wala pa yung mga ganong at wala pang tamang pag-aaral. So bakit ba nagawa? Back in 2010, may ginawa si SWS na survey, and they found that 58% of the sexual harassment happens in the streets. So kaya ito yung background nung law. Kaya nagkaroon ng 11313. So as a background, just to go through the para meron lang idea. So yung RA 7877 defines the work, education, or training sexual harassment. Sabi niya, it may be committed by an employer, employee, manager, supervisor, agent of the employer, teacher, instructor, professor, coach, trainer, or any person having authority, influence, or moral ascendancy over another in a work or training or education environment. So, very limiting yung anti-sexual harassment. If you can see, kahit na may mahabang enumeration, ang catch-all provision niya, dapat may yung single element na dapat may authority, may influence or moral ascendancy yung perpetrator over the victim. Dapat present yun to be able to file charges against the perpetrator. Also that dalawa lang ang settings na pwedeng ma-consider na sexual harassment. Yung work at saka training or education environment. So, again, yung sa mga public places, hindi siya covered by any other law, special law. Kasi pwede naman siya sa acts of lasciviousness kung papasa siya sa mga elements ng revised penal code. So, again, no peer-to-peer or subordinate to superior harassment. Did not include harassment that may occur in public places or private places that are open to the public. And did not include online harassment, sexual harassment. So to go to ang assignment ko now is to give the salient. Hindi ko na lahat ng provisions of law na hindi naman applicable sa atin practically, hindi ko na siya ganun i-discuss. Pero these are the forms of sexual harassment that is included in the law. First, yung gender-based streets and public spaces sexual harassment. It includes catcalling, wolf whistling, unwanted invitation, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist slur. So, lahat ba na tayo nakakaalam ng mas misogynistic, transphobic, and homophobic? Misogynistic is prejudicial to women. Transphobic is prejudicial acts that are prejudicial to transsexual or transgender. And homophobic prejudicial to gay people. And sexist slurs, persistent uninvited comments or gestures on person's appearance. So yun na, yung mga sexy, matambok ang puwet, gano'n. Relentless request for personal details, statement of sexual comments and suggestions, public masturbation, or flashing of private parts. Ngayon, ang dami na nating nakikita dyan na sa social media niyan. Sa mga jeep, di ba? Groping, or any advances, whether verbal or physical. Ito yung important, that is unwanted and has threatened one's sense of personal space and public physical safety and committed in public spaces. So, there are offenses that are highly dependent on the victim's emotion or feelings. Isa po ang sexual harassment sa once the victim felt na or what you did is unwanted and it has threatened his or her, hindi lang her, oneself of personal space and physical safety. That may be tantamount to sexual harassment. Of course, hindi lang po pwede na na-feel ni victim, may greet mo siya na good morning po, then she or he felt na parang na-violate ang privacy ko, parang na-violate ang physical safety ko. Hindi pwede. There should be that those acts, ginagawa yung acts that are listed or defined by the law, then coupled with the feeling ni victim na yung sense of personal space and physical safety niya ay na-violate. So what are public spaces? So medyo maliwanag naman, pero the law and its IRR defined public spaces as, remove ko lang po yung kasi hindi ko mabasa. Refers to streets, alleys, roads, sidewalks, public parks, buildings, schools, churches, public washrooms, malls, internet shops, restaurant, cafes, transportation terminals, public markets, evacuation centers. Yan, very important now because ang dami nating mga kababayan na nasa evacuation centers because of Bagyong Ulysses, because of the Taal volcano. Yan. Government offices, common carriers, public utility vehicles, and transportation network vehicles, yung mga Grab, yung mga angkas, yan. And other recreational spaces such as cinema halls, theaters, spas, bars, clubs, resorts, and water parks, hotels, and casinos, and all other areas, regardless of ownership, openly accessible or offered to be accessed by the public. So ito yung hindi lang po pinagbabawal yung sexual harassment sa mga public places, even to sa mga sexual harassment na nangyayari sa mga privately owned establishments that are open to public. So ano ito? So yung mga malls, bars, yan, yung mga resorts, yan. So covered na rin po siya ngayon ng law. So may special provision for the owners of privately owned places that are open to public. Kasi parang medyo sui generis, nag-iisa siya, isang classification siya na the law provides additional duties, additional responsibilities to the managers or supervisors or administrator of the establishments. Kasi bakit? Because hindi naman directly or immediately andun ang mga police sa mga establishments na to eh. They have control and supervision over whatever is happening in their establishment. So the law provides for further responsibilities to the building or establishment administrators or owners. So one, they should adopt a zero tolerance policy against gender-based sexual harassment. Then they are also directed or mandated to adopt preventive measures. What are these? Ano yung mga examples? To install clear visible warning signs against gender-based public spaces sexual harassment, including anti-sexual harassment hotline number in bold letters. Designate at least one anti-sexual harassment officer to receive gender-based sexual harassment complaints. So kailangan ba mag-hire? Hindi naman. Pwede ang security guard, pwede ang manager, pwede ang kahera, or anyone. Install CCTVs. Of course, kung may CCTV, hindi lang po makaka-prevent ng magnanakaw, makaka-prevent din po ng this will deter any perpetrator from doing acts of sexual harassment against pwedeng empleyado ng establishment or pwedeng kapwa customer. Also, pag nangyari ang sexual harassment, the establishments or owners or managers are expected to provide assistance to victims by coordinating to the local police authorities immediately after the reported case. Make CCTV available, hindi lang po upon court order. In fact, pwede rin po na talagang prerogative or practice ng proactive establishment to provide the victim CCTV footage to support his or her case. Provide a safe, gender-sensitive environment to encourage victims to report harassment at first instance. So, this is very essential kasi for all sexual harassment cases, it should be treated with confidentiality. And also, sabi nga natin, we have to build or to make an environment that is convenient and parang inviting for the victim to pursue the charges or to file a complaint. So, maganda na may separate room at nakikita, di ba maganda pagpasok mo sa isang establishment, may makita ka na zero, may guidelines sila or meron silang poster na against sexual harassment. Then nandun na rin, if you have complaints against sexual harassment, you can approach this person or go to the manager's office. Ang maganda rin po na aside from having office for complaints, kung saan pwede mag-complain ng victim, syempre hindi mo rin ilalagay yung silid na yon sa isang liblib na lugar na matatakot din ang victim na baka pagtulungan ka or the victim will also feel unsafe. So case-to-case basis. Develop protocols to follow in case of occurrence. Para yung mga tao naman ng establishment, hindi naman hindi nila alam kung anong gagawin. So pwedeng procedural, pwede rin na may trained din yung mga tao nila na pagka may nakita, alam ng mga tao nila what are the forms of sexual harassment. Anong gagawin mo at first instance kung may sexual harassment? Security guards or any person who witnessed a crime may conduct a citizen's arrest and apprehend the perpetrator in accordance with law. The idea here is for quick apprehension. Parang sabi nila, hindi siya. Kasi kailangan pagka andun na nangyayari, you have to apprehend, you have to stop it. Aantayin mo pa ba na na gawin yung act, 'di ba? Hindi na. So at the instance na mangyayari or after na mangyari, pwede mo nang i-apprehend yung tao. And anyone can do it if you have witnessed it. Pwede kang, you can be the superhero of the day and arrest that person. Or kung hindi, if you feel threatened naman, you can always go to the near, kung may police, may security guard, may manager, and report what is happening. Para yun ang mag-a-arrest sa tao. Security guards in places where may be deputized. So I don't know, kasi under the implementing rules, the PNP and I think the ILG is supposed to issue guidelines in deputizing security guards. I don't know kung meron ng existing. Pero that's one of their duty. So security guards in these places may be deputized to apprehend perpetrator caught in flagrante delito or in the act of committing a crime and are required to immediately coordinate with the local authorities. So citizens arrest in the presence, ito yung mga elements, in the presence of the private person or the person to be arrested or the perpetrator has committed. So kakatapos lang, is actually committing, nakikita mo na ginagawa, or attempting to commit, gagawin pa lang. So pwede mo nang pigilan, hindi kailangan antayin. So you can already arrest that person. Then pwedeng hindi mo kasi nakita, pero when the sexual harassment has in fact just been committed and the private person has personal knowledge of facts indicating that the person to be arrested has committed it. So paano to? Dito sa taas meron ng committed, actually committing, attempting. Ano yung second Kasi pwedeng hindi mo siya nakita. However, pwedeng yung ibang senses mo can tell you with no doubt that sexual harassment has done. So baka narinig mo, bastos ka! Yon. Tapos biglang may tumatakbo ng lalaki from that area. So may sufficient may prima facie, may sufficient information or facts na may nangyaring pambabastos. At yung taong aarestuhin mo, yung tumatakbong tao, yun. Tapos coupled pa na tumatakbo rin yung babae, hulihin nyo yan. Yun. So that is one instance na pwede mag-citizens arrest. Isang rin na may special provision sa law are sexual harassment in public utility vehicles. So bakit? Kasi nga sabi ko nga, maraming mga, katulad ng experience ko, tricycle lang yon, open space, open yung I can always jump. Pero what more kung nasa loob ng enclosed car na pwedeng i-lock ni driver yung sasakyan. So may special provision ang law to deter sexual harassment in public utility vehicles. So aside from the penalties that I will discuss later, na pwedeng ipataw sa driver na perpetrated the sexual harassment, the LTO may also cancel the license of the perpetrator found to have committed acts constituting sexual harassment in public utility vehicles. The LTFRB may also suspend and revoke franchise of transportation operators who commit gender-based streets and public spaces sexual harassment acts. So bakit si franchise? Nasa bahay lang naman siya at natutulog. Siya yung may-ari pero hindi siya ang driver. Bakit? Because under the civil code, under the common carriage, may responsibility si operator in the selection and supervision of his employees. So, when the perpetrator is where perpetrator is the driver of the vehicle, shall also constitute. Okay. Kapag ang sexual harassment happens in a public utility vehicle, it's also a breach of carriage, contract of carriage. Because sa breach of contract of carriage, meron kayong assumed, the passenger and the operator has that assumed contract na yung sasakyan mo at saka yung driver mo, ihahatid ako safe and sound sa pupuntahan ko. Kung the sexual harassment is committed by the driver, may breach na agad, automatic may breach. This gives the operators of public utility vehicles, yung mga may-ari ng Grab, meron din silang liability, solidary liability. Ang solidary liability hindi lang applicable sa COA disallowance. Meron din siya sa common carriage. Na pagka nag-misbehave, kaya nga ang damages, di ba? Ang imprisonment is criminal actions are personal. So hindi mo naman pwedeng i-imprison si operator kasi sexually harassed. Sinexually harass niya yung passenger niya, yung driver. Pero the victim can always claim damages for the breach of contract of carriage against the employer or the operator of the public utility vehicles or TNVS. Okay, who are the anti-sexual harassment enforcers? So, under the law, maraming agencies ang kasama in order to prevent and to address sexual harassment. Kaya lang, ito yung medyo mas important eh. Aside from the MMDA, PNP, LG, LGUs, barangays, lahat yan. Covered yan lahat ng lahat sila may duties and responsibilities. Pero the important, isang important aspect of the law is that yung ang tawag nila ASHE, the Anti-Sexual Harassment Enforcers. So, the law provides that the MMDA and the local units of the PNP shall deputize its enforcers to be anti-sexual harassment officers. So yung mga traffic enforcers ng MMDA na makikita naka-blue or yung mga naka-deploy na PNP officers sa mga daanan habang nagte-text, diba? Pwede natin lapitan pa yung pag binastos ka, sinipulan ka or nagsalita ng di maganda or binastos ka or someone nakita mo yung isang tao, you can always approach the MMDA and PNP and they can receive complaints on the streets. They can also immediately apprehend perpetrator if caught in flagrante delito. The perpetrator shall be brought, so the ASHE shall bring the perpetrator to the nearest PNP station to face charges of offenses committed. And together with the Women's and Children's Desk of the PNP, the ASHE shall keep a ledger of perpetrators for purposes of determining if a perpetrator is a first-time, second-time, or third-time offender. Malalaman nyo bakit important ito mamaya. Kasi the more recidivism ang tawag dyan, the more na paulit-ulit ang isang perpetrator, mas tumataas ang kanyang penalties. Yan, yung pala eh. First-degree offenses, these are cursing, wolf whistling, catcalling, leering, intrusive pacing, taunting. So wala pang hawak to. More of, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic slurs, persistent, more of verbal lang siya. Persisting telling of sexual jokes, expressing, yan ang mga covered ng first-degree offenses. So, penalties niyan, for first offense of first-degree offenses, 1,000 pesos fine and 12 hours community service, including gender sensitivity seminars. Then, second time na offender, arresto menor, which is imprisonment of 6 days to 10 days, or 3,000 pesos fine at the discretion of the court, of course. Third time offender, arresto menor pa rin, pero 11 days to 30 days of imprisonment and 10,000 pesos fine. Second degree offenses. These are, ito may hawak na, making offensive body gestures at someone, public masturbation, flashing of private parts, groping, and similar lewd actions. So mas higher na yung degree ng offense. First offense, 10,000 fine and 12-hour community service with gender sensitivity seminar. Second offense, arresto menor, 11 days to 30 days of imprisonment or 15,000 pesos fine. And third offense, arresto mayor, 1 month and 1 day to 6 months and 20,000 pesos fine. Third degree offenses at may stalking, any acts listed under the first and second degree when accompanied by touching, pinching, and brushing against the body of the offended person. So may hawak na. Or touching, pinching, or brushing against the genitalia, face, arms, anus, groin, breast, inner thigh, thighs, face, buttocks, or any part of the victim. So yan, third degree, first offense, arresto menor, 11 days to 30 days imprisonment, or 30,000 fine with gender sensitivity seminar. Second offense, arrest 1 month, 1 day to 6 months, or 50,000 pesos fine, and arresto mayor 4 months, 1 day to 6 months, or 100,000 pesos fine. So what happens if the sexual harassment is committed by a minor? So may special may special ang treatment natin sa mga minors in the Philippine setup, judicial system, because we always consider minors in conflict with the law as first ang presumption natin they are victims. Na one, they may be exposed at their young age sa criminality, kaya they do this. Kaya our justice system is more on the reformatory program when it comes to minor offenders. So under the law, the DSWD shall take necessary disciplinary measures as provided for under the Public Act number 9344 or the JJWA or the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act. Kasi under the law, iba-iba yung interventions when it comes to minor, and depende sa gravity of the offense, depende rin kung recidivist, depende rin sa age ng offender. Under the law rin, the DSWD is a prime government agency na dapat mangalaga to provide programs that are age appropriate, gender sensitive, and it also includes anti-sexual harassment awareness activities. Okay, one of the important and very relevant provision of the law is the gender-based online sexual harassment, or GBOSH. GBOSH is are acts that use information and communications technology, ICT, in terrorizing and intimidating victims. So physical, psychological, and emotional threats, unwanted sexual, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist remarks, and comments online, whether public or through private, direct and private messages. So hindi kailangan na pinopost, katulad ng nangyari kay Liza Soberano. You don't need to post it for you to be, kay Liza, that was kay Liza pala, it was not a post, pero it was a comment of the perpetrator, and the perpetrator was a female. So, meaning lang, the law, that's not, it covers all forms of sexual harassment. Pwedeng, hindi lang siya sexual harassment by male to female. Pero female to female, pwede rin. Pwede rin male to homosexuals, covered din ng law. So, if dito talaga makikita mo the equality of gender. Invasion of victims' privacy through cyber stalking and incessant messaging. So, baka si Ivana Alawi na-experience niya to. Uploading and sharing without consent of victims any form of media that contains photos, voice, or video sexual content. Pwede si Hayden ko. Dapat si Hayden ko, naging liable si Hayden ko? No, because he did not upload it. Diba? Pero pwede siyang maging liable for recording, unauthorized recording and sharing of, ayun pala hindi para pwede again, because the law says unauthorized recording and sharing yon of any of the victim's photos, videos, and any online information online. Impersonating identities of victims online or lies about victims to harm their reputation. Filing false abuse, ito yung mga victim shaming na to. Filing false abuse report to online platforms to silence the victims. These are the penalties for the online sexual harassment. Mas mataas siya because once you post it, it's there. Hindi mo na siya matatanggal. It can be multiplied. It can be spread by anyone. Kahit na, di ba, kahit na, I don't know, I'm not a techie person, pero alam ko na kahit na in-erase mo na yan, it's there, it's still there. Naka-imprint pa rin siya. Kung sinong naka-grab ng post mo, pwede niyan ikalat yan. And lahat kayo, yung nag-post and nagkakalat are maybe liable. Prison correctional in its medium period, 2 years, 4 months, and 1 day to 4 years and 2 months imprisonment, or fine of not less than 100,000 but not more than 500,000, or both at the discretion of the court. Bakit mas mataas? Kasi nga, mas malaki ang grasp ng online. Isang post mo lang, lahat ng kakilala mo, kakilala ng tao, even strangers can get that information. At ang hirap ibalik. Anything that is posted, anything that is written and read, hindi mo mababalik. Buti pa ang ang words, pwede pang hindi makarating sa tao. Pero once na post mo sa online, wala. You have no control. And the abuse or the harm, damages towards the victim is uncontrollable. Now, if perpetrator is a juridical person, so sino ba ang mga juridical person? Pwedeng online news agency, pwede ang online sites, websites, yan. So, ang mga effects niya ay the license and franchise shall be automatically deemed revoked. Persons liable shall be its officers, editor, or reporter in the case of print media, and station managers, editors, broadcaster in the case of broadcast media. So parang rapper. Although si rapper hindi naman sexual harassment. So pero similar. It's akin to the spirit of this provision. Qualified gender-based sexual harassment in public places and gender-based online sexual harassment. Bakit qualified? Because the intent of the law is to give higher penalties when these circumstances are present in a case. So, katulad na sabi kanina, di ba may ranges yung natin, 11 days to 30 days. So, when these circumstances are present in a case, so automatic, ipapataw ng korte ay yung maximum possible penalty. So, one, yung sa mga PUVs. Bakit? Yun nga, sabi ko kanina, they have control, the full control of the vehicle. Kung saan niya gagawin yung acts. So mas mataas talaga ang penalty na pinapataw as provided by the law. If the offended party is a minor for obvious reason, senior citizen for obvious reason, or a person with disability, again for obvious reason, or a breastfeeding mother nursing her child. Hindi lang for obvious reason, because we want to normalize breastfeeding even in public. Because that's a natural function of mothers, nursing mothers, na dapat maging aware at dapat matanggap ng society. At hindi kabastusan ang breastfeeding sa public by the mother. If the offended party is diagnosed with mental problem tending to impair consent, of course, kasi dito, walang kalaban-laban yung victim. She may not even recognize or after the fact na namolest siya na pala siya. Hindi man lang niya alam. So walang kalaban-laban. So the law provides extra care, extra precaution, extra protection to marginalized individuals or sectors. If the perpetrator is a member of the uniformed service, so PNP, AFP, Coast Guard, uniform ang Coast Guard. But still they have that also sense of authority. Syempre, pag nakakita ka ng, di ba, mga drivers dyan, pag nakakita ka ng trafcom, takot ka na. Boots pa lang ng trafcom, takot na tayo. But kung imagine if you are in a liblib place and may mga military or PNP or even people na nakasuot, and then they do these acts, makakalaban ka pa kaya, di ba? Takot ka na. Kaya mas mataas ang penalty sa kanila. If the act takes place in the premises of the government, especially frontline services to the public, and perpetrator is a government employee, sa mga na nagdi-distribute ng ayuda, 'di ba? Sa mga 4Ps, bago sabihin ng ikaw na nga dapat tumutulong, ikaw pa yung babastos. Sabi mo, nanay, bago ko i-release sa'yo to, paano naman? O, di ba? So, kasi lumalapit yung tao for tulong. And most of the time, those who are approaching for or seeking for help are desperate people. So, or in desperate situations na pwedeng i-exploit ng mga ng tao. Aside from the fact, mataas din ang moral duty ng isang empleyado ng gobyerno towards the civil of the society. Kaya mataas din ang penalty. May I flag lang the fact na remember itong law is also applicable to public and to private. So there are provisions under the revised, the 2017 rules in administrative cases para na applicable sa atin. So yung procedures on how to file, iba, especially sa administrative aspect of the case, iba ang protocols natin, ang procedure. So we have just recently amended, revised our DOST disciplinary rules due for publication na siya. Doon, codified na or sinama na ang anti-sexual harassment resolution ng civil service and procedure. Andun na rin yung procedure na susundin natin if sexual harassment acts or cases arise in our office.
Dapat na ibabalik ko, hindi ko naman nabalik.
Okay, may question? Okay. Now, ito, meron na to dati sa 7877, workplace harassment. Kaya lang, under the old definition, sexual harassment in workplace occurs when sexual favor are solicited in exchange. So may exchange, employment or continuous employment, favorable employment condition, the refusal to accede or to give in, may result to adverse working condition, impairment of employees' rights and privileges, or result in hostile and offensive environment. So ito yung elements sa old law for case of sexual harassment to prosper. Kaya lang, under the old, the new law, aside from yung sinong perpetrator, under the new law, the new definition of sexual harassment occurs when the perpetrator gives unwanted, unwelcome, uninvited sexual remarks or actions against any person. Any person na ha. So meaning, a male employer or employee, or homosexual or transsexual employer or employee may be victims and may be perpetrators of sexual harassment. So importante lang dyan that the action that was made is unwanted, unwelcome, and uninvited, and that it threatens the victim's sense of personal space and safety. As I said, that it depends. Hindi pwedeng sabihin ni perpetrator, hindi yun ang motibo ko. I was just being friendly. Hindi yun yung objective ko. Ano lang yun, I was just joking. Diba? That's how I approach it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Hindi nakadepende ang merit ng case on your feelings. Diba? Feelings ni pa-victim. Joke, hindi pa-victim. Feelings ni victim ang ang ano dyan. Of course, again, may I stress lang na hindi lang victim sense of personal space. I felt na hindi lang. Kailangan coupled with the acts that is being penalized by the law. So, sino ba pwedeng maging perpetrator sa isang workplace? So, ito yung sa mga expanded forms ng sexual harassment under the Bawal Bastos Act. So, as usual, yung superior to subordinate kasi under the yung nga moral ascendancy. Subordinate to superior. So, pwede na pabaliktad, 'di ba? Pwede na mambastos si security guard kay director. Why not? Malakas ang loob. Between peers, so pwedeng equal. Student to teacher. So baka may magtanong, bakit student to teacher din dito? Bakit hindi yan sa education and training? Because sa education and training, as I will be explained later, these are sexual harassment towards the students. Pero pag ang student ang perpetrator, the sexual harassment shall be covered by sexual harassment in workplace as that teacher bilang victim. Or the trainee to the trainer. Yon. So, pwedeng baliktad talaga. So, all forms. Ito yung kino-cover niya all forms. Hindi lang lahat yung hindi ina-highlight. Tinanggal na yung pag-highlight sa influence and authority ng perpetrator towards them because there are scenarios where even the subordinate can harass the superior. Workplace includes all sites, locations, spaces where work is being undertaken by an employee within or outside the premises of the usual place of business. So kung may year-end assessment sa labas, pwede, kahit wala ka sa opisina. Pwede sa vehicle, papunta or pauwi. Diba? Pwede. Or kung dumaan nagmerienda, pwede yon. So duties of the employer. So hindi lang po ang employer dito, hindi lang po si DOST. Pwede rin po yung sa private owned institutions or sa private private agencies. First is to disseminate or post in a conspicuous place a copy of the law and the IRR. Provide measures to prevent gender-based sexual harassment. Paano? To training, seminars, gender sensitivity seminars, yung mga ganyan, violence against women seminars. Create an independent internal mechanism or committee on decorum and investigation. So under the RACs or the Civil Service Rules on Administrative, may CODI na rin po sa government sector. So wala pa po itong law, may CODI na kasi dahil may previous laws na mandating all private and especially sa schools and sa government agencies to have a CODI. Because CODI will receive the complaints, CODI will investigate, CODI will make reports to the disciplining authority to make recommendations. So yan ang functions ni CODI. Develop and disseminate code of conduct or workplace policy. So sa private, pwedeng the private establishments or the manager will make their own code of conduct. Although tayo sa government, meron na po ginawa may batas na po tayong sinusunod na 6713. And si civil service din, may mga mga policies na nilabas na bago pa ako nabuhay sa mundo, meron ng code of conduct. So, the Code of Conduct or Workplace Policy shall expressly reiterate the prohibition of gender-based sexual harassment, describe the procedure of internal mechanism, and set administrative penalties. Kaya may set dito because nga, again, applicable to sa private. Kung sa public yan, ang nagsiset niyan ay si civil service. As they are the prime person na human resource agency of the government. Liability of employers for non-implementation of their duties under the law. So kung hindi gagawin or hindi i-implement yung mga nilista kanina, nakalista, and also if they don't take action, if may nag-report at wala silang ginawa, nanahimik or hindi pinansin, in-ignore. Penalties: non-compliance of the duties, fine of not less than 5,000, not nor more than 10,000. Inaction, kung yung second aspect naman na hindi inaksyonan yung mga complaints, fine of not less than 10,000 nor more than 15,000. Under the civil service, the RACS, iba naman ang administrative liability ng isang head of the agency. Iba, may ibang penalty na ipinataw ang civil service for that. Okay, gender-based sexual harassment in education and training institutions. So meron na rin po ito sa dating batas, kaya lang ito po ay covered. Education training institution covered are private and public schools, institutions, so we have PSI. So institutions that offer courses or programs online, alternative learning, so mga ELS, and yung mga very applicable now that we are having distance learning, and other non-conventional form of higher education. Government agencies with educational training academies, either for its employees or for the public, chartered institutions or those created by law. Ayan. Yun yung mga covered institutions. Who are considered students? These students, the word student refers to, refer lang dapat, to those enrolled full-time or part-time in the regular courses or short-term and special training. So kahit na webinar, pwede pa rin makakommit ng sexual harassment. Baka during discussion, may biglang nasabi. Pwede yon. Duties of educational training institutions. Again, kung meron si employer, meron din si educational training institutions, mga special set of duties na dapat na i-implement or gawin. First is to designate office or person to receive complaints. So importante to sa mga, usually pag sa school, guidance counselor or students moderator. So the person to be designated or the office to be designated must be readily accessible to receive complaints. Kasi nga, it's very hard for, it is an accepted fact na hindi lahat ng estudyante ay will approach or will file a complaint. Kaya importante na ang isang education or training institution ay, lalo na pag minors, ay to have that environment na we are open and we welcome any complaints of sexual harassment, lalo na sa mga bata. The process must be efficient and convenient. Hindi yun mapapagod pa ang bata or ang estudyante na mag-file ng complaint sa daming rekwisito na dapat na baka hihingan pa ng medical certificate, ganon. Dapat dapat mabilis, efficient, convenient, para hindi mawalan ng gana yung complainant to file the case. The person designated should also forward the complaints to the CODI 48 hours from receipt of complaint. Dapat knowledgeable din siya on how to handle the case. Hindi pwedeng kahit sino na lang. Tapos, kasi hindi lang kasi siya yung magre-receive ng complaint or to process. Expected din na yung person designated to also give initial assistance. Like yung ito, kailangan ma-assess niya kung kailangan ba ng immediate mental or physical assistance ng victim, kailangan niya ba ng counseling, anong kailangan interventions. So kailangan yung person designated must be equipped. Dapat may knowledge and skill siya to handle such sensitive cases. Determine if the offended party needs immediate assistance such as counseling or medical services. Ensure confidentiality. Yan. Very primordial in any sexual harassment case. Mapalalaki, babae, matanda, bata. That all cases or especially complaints must be treated with confidentiality because threatened na nga si victim. Nagdadalawang isip na yan kung I have witnessed personally these kinds of ito yung pagdadalawang isip ng victims to come out, to have that courage to step out, to file a complaint. It's not easy. It's easy for us to say, I will fight for myself. I will fight for my right. But if you're there, and especially if the perpetrator is someone in authority, it's very difficult, even for me. Adopt and publish grievance procedure to facilitate the filing of complaints by students, staffs, and faculty member. Yan. Meron tayo grievance. Kasi nga, why grievance? Bakit kailangan ng grievance? Because sexual harassment are personal offenses. So kahit sa civil service, for personal offenses, pwedeng pag-usapan ng victim at saka ng perpetrator. Pwedeng aregluhin. Kasi it is always dependent upon the victim if willing siya. If may victim okay sa kanya na pag-usapan, sige, isuspend yun na lang. Okay rin kay perpetrator para wala ng hula-balo of hearings. Or pwede na lang na mag-issue ng apology na hindi na uulitin. Pwede rin yun. Pwedeng pag-usapan yun. Ang hindi lang pwedeng i-grievance ay offenses that is against the government or the office. Pag personal, pwede. Kaya pwedeng i-grievance siya. What if victim does not want to file complaints? Has not requested the school to take action? Hindi na lang mapapansinin? Of course not. Under the law, meron pa rin obligation and duty. Hindi lang siya discretionary. Especially if the administrator has sufficient knowledge, has sufficient evidence and witnesses to pursue the case, because hindi lang naman we are not just preventing or remedying or punishing the perpetrator for the acts committed to the victim. Kasi pwede rin kasi masyado na pwedeng one time lang, pero what if marami ka nang narinig as administrator na marami ng victims na narinig at marami na ring witnesses pero hindi lang tinutuloy. Diba? You have that moral obligation to also protect your agency or the school, especially the school, because you are catering to minor students, kung minor nga. Even to adults. Kailangan you have to protect. Hindi lang you don't need to only protect the victim, but you also need to protect your institution. So once a perpetrator is found guilty, the educational institution may reserve the right to strip the diploma from the perpetrator or issue an expulsion order. So ito baka kung estudyante ang perpetrator. Strict confidentiality of the proceedings again. Respect privacy of the victim and exert effort to determine the readiness and willingness to pursue a case against the perpetrator. Proper referral for legal assistance in case victims decides to go to court. Support victims involved in sexual harassment related court proceedings. Support parties. So dito, hindi lang po si victim ang pinapangalagaan natin. Remember, even perpetrators have their rights. Sa ating, in fact, sa judicial system, meron tayong tinatawag na benefit of the doubt towards a perpetrator. So pwede kasi hinaharas lang siya. And that's very possible. So hindi pwede na yung protocols and the policies and the principles that we will adopt ay laging victim-centered. Hindi. Dapat pantay rin. We still have to give due respect and protect equally the right of the perpetrator. So, by kung may court hearings, so we give due consideration sa parties, hindi lang sa victim, parties who are involved in the court proceedings. So kung may paperwork, may kailangan i-submit si teacher na pwede namang na to give leniency. Kung bukas ang hearing niya, kailangan niya mag-prepare at meron siyang dapat pwede naman to adjust and give the teacher din the sufficient time and preparation to prepare for his case. The same with victims, of course. Excuse absences from classes when they need to attend to court hearings. Hindi lang sa victim, also sa perpetrator, because under our judicial system, respondents should have their due process also. The right to litigate his case. Who can commit gender-based sexual harassment in education training institutions? Ang hirap pala ng ganitong walang audience. I don't know if I'm still with people. Anyway, who can commit gender-based sexual harassment in education and training institutions? Pwede bang pa-thumbs up if I'm still okay? Or clap? Hello? Okay. Thank you, Ma'am Marjorie Bahado. At least alam kong okay pa kayo. Who can commit? Kasi gusto kong medyo paiksian to para kasi medyo maiksi ang ating attention span pag online. Para mas maraming time for question and answer if you have. So who can commit gender-based sexual harassment in educational and training institutions? So principal, of course. School heads, teachers. Etong enumeration is found, this is not found in the law, but this is found in the IRR. Instructor, professor, coaches, trainers, or any person who has authority, influence, or moral ascendancy over another student, or students, or trainees. So, iniisip ko kagabi, nung nagising ako ng madaling araw, napaisip ako, what if yun nga, yung this actually mga 12 midnight kasi maaga ako matulog eh. So pagising ko ng 12 midnight, naalala ko, paano kung ang perpetrator ay student? Kaya ni-research ko. Ang sabi nga, pag batas, nandun pala siya sa na pag student ang perpetrator, hindi siya mag-fall dito sa education and training institutions, pero it will fall dun sa workplace. So yun. Duties of school heads and head of training institutions. The same with the employer. Kailangan may duty rin ang school heads or heads of the training institutions to disseminate, post, copy of the law and the IRR in a conspicuous place. Pwede rin nga isama na siya sa school handbook or student handbook. Yan. To provide measures, information campaign to prevent GBS, seminars, trainings, similar to this, what we have today. Yan. These are measures to prevent gender-based sexual harassment. Create internal mechanism or CODI, the same, to investigate and address complaint, and provide and disseminate a code of conduct or school policy, which shall, the same, expressly reiterated prohibition on gender-based sexual harassment, prescribed procedure, and set administrative penalties. Di ba may academic freedom si schools to set administrative penalties towards their students and towards their faculty or staff. So pwedeng iset ni school yan. Penalties for non-implementation, same dun sa employer, meron din penalty si school head. Fine of not less than 5,000, not more than yan, sorry. 10,000, and inaction fine of not less than 10,000, not more than 15,000. This shall not preclude the filing of administrative cases against school head for appropriate disciplinary actions. Remember, for three-pronged approach kasi pagka may criminal case. Especially kung sa mga public sector employer or employee or civil servant. May three-prong approach tayo. For every actions we do, we can be held liable for criminal liability, civil liability. Criminal, ang ano niyan ay imprisonment. Civil damages, and excuse me. Criminal kasi imprisonment. These are criminal actions are actions wherein the Philippine government or the Republic of the Philippines is the offended party, because the actions committed are considered acts against the the society. Ang private party, yung victim, becomes a private complainant. Ang compensation sa private complainant, syempre hindi naman ikukulong ni private complainant si perpetrator. Ang ano ba tamang to? Hindi remuneration eh. Pero ang claim ni complainant, private complainant, is damages. Yun yung civil aspect of the case, of a criminal case. And lastly, especially for government employees, employers, officers or civil servants, we have the administrative liability. So the administrative liability will not be prejudiced. So pwedeng sabay-sabay yan. While hinihear ang criminal and civil aspect ng case sa courts, pwede rin si agency to simultaneously hear the administrative aspect of the case. Kasi nga sabi ko nga, the acts committed by the person may be prejudicial. Conduct prejudicial to the agency. So pwede rin kung marami nang nagrereklamo sa isang officer or sa isang empleyado, pwede this may be reflect badly on the agency. And dapat ito yung obligation ni head of agency to prevent yung ganitong perception, especially sa government service. We have to uphold the dignity, integrity of our office, not because for any personal reason, but because it's our duty under the code of conduct. So it is in fact, sabi ko nga kanina sa RACS, may penalty for administrative officers who will ignore and who will not take action on any sexual harassment cases. So yun. Liability of students, minor students found to have committed acts of sexual harassment ito applicable sa PISAY, hindi ko alam kung may impact ng PISAY, shall only be liable for administrative sanctions by the school as stated in their school handbook. So yun. So syempre minor, hindi naman pwede, depende sa sa Juvenile Justice Act. Pero under the law, sabi ni law, only administrative sanctions so pwede masuspend or kick out. Syempre, always after due process, always after hearing, always after observance of the procedure. Yun. Paano kung ang student ay hindi minor? Of course, mag-fall na siya kung college student against a professor or college student against peer sa klase niya. Syempre mag-ano na siya, maybe that will fall under sexual harassment sa public place because the school is a public place, diba? Hindi lang siya mag-fall under sa education kasi nga sa sexual harassment in an education or institutional setup, element of the crime is the moral ascendancy or authority of the perpetrator towards the victim. Code of conduct, okay, so government, again, we already have this, pero para sa private, ng education or private or employer, dapat may ma-develop na code of conduct within 150 days from effectivity of the IRR. Ang IRR ay na-approve October 28, 2019. So 150 days from then, may obligation si education training institutions to develop its own code of conduct. Kung meron naman existing, hindi na kailangan ng bago. Pwedeng ma-expand just to cover other aspects of the law na hindi covered dati. Okay, who, private or public or private sector employers, and heads of education and training institutions. How? Syempre, you have to consult with your workers, union, or student council. What are the contents of the Code of Conduct? First, in definition of the sexual harassment, coverage forms, classification, appropriate penalties, and how committed and by whom. Procedures in filing, investigation, resolution, para guided, para may protocol na. Hindi yung parang discretionary yung procedure kung paano i-handle ang specific cases. Dapat may naka set up na guidelines and policies in handling cases like this. Para hindi parang si institution or si employer kung paano i-handle yung case. Functions, responsibilities, composition, and qualifications of members of CODI. So under the RACs, meron ng qualifications and composition. Including penalties, again, sa RACs, meron din to penalties imposed to the CODI in cases of non-performance or inadequate performance of functions. Provision of support, especially for victims of the sexual harassment, psychological, psychosocial, counseling, referral to such service if wala namang capacity si schools or si employer, pwedeng i-refer sa professional, especially that this is an emotional and psychological trauma that we are dealing, assisting in filing of cases. Exemptions. May mga exemptions naman. For example, one of the exemptions as provided by the law is legitimate expression of indigenous culture and tradition. So, kung may nakita kang native IT or si Aita nakabahag, nakikita yung kanyang puwet. So, ano na ba yun? Sexual harassment na? Ano niya na ba? Na-invade niya na ba yung privacy mo? Or did you feel unsafe? So, hindi legitimate yun. Because that is we also have laws that protects IPs, indigenous people. You have to preserve our culture. However, yung culture and tradition cannot be used if the actions made or yung mga perpetrated is discriminatory to women, girls, and persons. Kaya nga, there may be culture na pwedeng ikasal ang 8 years old, pero under the law, hindi pwede. Diba? Hindi pwedeng magtago ang perpetrator in the guise or principle of culture and tradition if such tradition or culture is discriminatory or prejudicial to the rights of another, hindi lang women. Kasi dito nga, diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Again, breastfeeding in public is not kabastusan. Don't feel offended if someone puts out. Although, mga women naman, we're modest naman na we don't just flaunt our breast. There are already mga damit and yung mga ponchos na to cover up. Pero still some people are medyo hindi comfortable. Pero again, it's not sexual harassment. Okay, pwede lang ba kahit anytime paantayin mo, humupa ang feelings mo bago mo i-file ng case? The law provides prescriptive period. So these are prescriptive period meaning ito lang yung time na pwede mong isampa yung kaso against sa perpetrator. Hindi pwedeng forever after 30 years na realize mo, ay gusto kong kasi nung ginawa yung act, okay lang sa'yo, pero after 20 years nag-away kayo, babalikan mo ngayon. Hindi pwedeng gano'n. So for first degree offenses, cursing, whistling, catcalling, meron na siyang prescriptive period of 1 year. Second degree offenses, may prescriptive period of 3 years upon the act after occurrence of the sexual harassment act. So third degree offenses, talking, touching, pinching, 10 years. Now, pagdating sa online sexual harassment, it's imprescriptible, meaning hindi magpe-prescribe. You can always be liable to whatever you upload or whatever you do using information communication technology. So kung may kinex ka or may nasabi ka 10 years, 50 years, pwede ka pa ring balikan. Kasi it's there eh. It's just there, floating. Pwedeng paulit-ulit na i-share yung in-upload mo. So workplace, 5 years, and education and training institutions, 5 years. So that's the end of the law. Pero let me, before we go to the question and answer, let me share to you very meaningful, very short lang siya pero very malaman na quote from Jane Addams. Jane Addams is a social, human rights and labor activist in the US. Tama ba US? Sabi niya, the good we secure for ourselves is precarious and uncertain until it is secured for all of us and incorporated into our common life. So it may be important that we know our rights and we fight for our rights. But it is more important that the community, us, lahat tayo, as a community, we learn, we value, and we uphold the basic human rights and civil liberties that is guaranteed under our Constitution. Or even hindi lang Constitution morally. Kung ano yung mga civil liberties, mga karapatan natin. Hindi importante na tayo lang ang nakaka-appreciate. Tayo lang paglalaman kasi mawawala if others will trample on it. But if everyone, each and everyone member of the society will learn, will value, and uphold these basic human rights, mas mapagtitibay natin ang mga karapatan na binigay sa atin ng ating konstitusyon. The mother of all laws. Our basic guard, our basic very core of our rights. Yan. So to ensure continuous enjoyment and protection, everyone must take part in sharing, in upholding, and in protecting the rights not only for ourselves but for others. So that ends meron pa ba akong nakalimutan sa aking mga notes? Wala na po yata. That ends this morning's sharing. And I will welcome questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Angel, for that very wonderful and informative session. Before we proceed to the question and answer, we would like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Diana Ignacio, the Assistant Secretary of Human Resource Management, Management Services, and Special Concerns, and also Director Martin Wee of DOST Region 9. Welcome.
First question.
Okay, so I believe that all our participants are able to understand they are a 11313 or the Safe Spaces Act. Now, it's time for our question and answer portion. Wow, lakas naman Miss Universe nito. All your questions in the comment box. We're taking note of our technical team, so Attorney Angel can answer it in a bit. So for the first question, galing po ito from Ms. Jen Ducusin of STII. Sabi niya po, paano po pagtakot yung victim, ayaw niya ireklamo ang superior, pero may mga nakakita? Kailangan po ba yung naharas ang magreklamo o pwede yung mga nakakita?
Again po kasi mahirap po kasi na madaling i-explain. Pwede naman po kasi under sa saan ba to? Anong setup mo nga pala? Private or public?
Public po ata.
Kasi sa public, 'di ba, we can always apprehend. kapag public, criminal action is it's a crime against any person. Kaya pag criminal, kahit na walang private complainant, pwede pa rin mag-pursue. So for example, mahirap lang siyang i-litigate kasi wala kang victim na i-present sa court. Pero technically, all criminal cases are cases against the state. So for example, walang victim, pero meron kang nakitang merong nahagip sa CCTV or nakita ng mismong officer, PNP officer, pwede pa rin i-pursue ang case because cases are it's not against a private person but it's against a state. So the prosecutor can still pursue the case against the perpetrator. Basta sufficient yung evidence. Kaya maganda kung may CCTV at nakita yung panghihipo, hindi kailangan ng victim na pumunta pa sa kung hindi talaga kaya ng victim. Pwede pa rin po i-pursue ni prosecutor basta sufficient ang evidence against the perpetrator.
Okay, thank you po, Attorney Angel. Next question po, from Miss LV Senita. Sabi niya po, Attorney, tanong ko lang kasi iniisip ang gastos. Kung mahirap lang ang tao, paano? Saan magpatulong magsampa ng kaso para maparusahan ang may sala sa pulis? Wala bang gastos? Sa PAW naman, pupunta hindi tinatanggap ang may trabaho kahit maliit lang ang sweldo.
Again, depende sa setup. Kung public yan, there are advocates of violence against or any forms of violence. So pwedeng kung totoo mahirap na kasi pagka may trabaho, medyo kasi because of the load of the PAW, mahirap din siyang i-accommodate. Pero actually, when you go to the prosecutor or PNP, walang gastos. Kasi may lawyer ka na eh. May lawyer ka yung prosecutor at hindi mo binabayaran yung prosecutor. Ang gastos lang naman if you will hire your private lawyer. Kasi the reality of it, yung prosecutor din ay maraming trabaho. So, pwedeng hindi niya masyado bigyan ng pansin ang yung kaso. If you are really if you really want to pursue your case and if you really want to focus on your case, most of the time we hire private lawyers na deputize ng prosecutor. Pero it doesn't mean na hindi na pwedeng i-file if or maraming gastos. Kasi si prosecutor naman ang mag-file ng case mo. Kasi criminal nga siya, hindi naman siya civil case. Yeah.
Thank you po, Attorney Angel. Next question po from HR DOST Mimaropa. Hi ma'am, what if the perpetrator is proven clinically diagnosed with mental disorder, for example, exhibitionist, paraphilic disorder, and psychosis? Who is liable po, and how can we help both po?
That's a matter of defense. Kung ang court ang magde-decide if talagang sufficient yung finding sa kanya ng professional medical practitioner na talagang clinically siya. Kung ganun kasi under the revised penal code, that may be a justifying or exempting circumstance. So depende sa facts of the case. So pwedeng walang maging liable sa case na yon kasi may mga circumstances na provided by law na hindi katulad ng ng mga may mental disorder nga, yung mga siraulo na pag nasaksak ka, napatay ka, hindi mo naman pwedeng in-prison kasi nga hindi wala siya sa gustong wisyo. So under the law, hindi rin ine-exempt po sila. Hindi justified, exempting pagka ganon. So pwedeng walang unless na may mga conspirator siya na or may kasabwat siya, may accessory siya na tumulong sa kanya who are mentally fit, they may be held liable. Or kung yun nga, kinonsinti siya ng employer niya, hindi ginawa ni employer yung dapat niyang gawin, you can go against the employer.
Okay, thank you very much po. Next question po from DOST1 kay Ms. Maureen Heidi Perez. Sabi niya, "Hi ma'am, for an instance where the abused woman has mental illness, how can she seek justice knowing that her statements will be questionable?" Thank you po.
Wala pong kine-question ang mental. In fact, the law provides extra protection for people with disability. Di ba kanina I explained na mas mataas ang penalty sa taong may mental disorder. So, hindi it will not be taken against the victim kung may mental disorder siya. Hindi porket may mental disorder ka, hindi ka paniniwalaan. If you have sufficient evidence, if you have sufficient witnesses to say that the acts were committed against you, in fact, mas pinoprotektahan pa nga po yung mga may mental disorder.
Okay po, one last question po from Ms. Elizabeth P. Aliadel ng PES. Sabi niya po, do the level of offenses first, second, and third implies to the number of times the offense of the perpetrator is made to one victim?
Hindi po. The level of offenses, yun yung degree or the severity of the action. So, yung level, yung first, second, and third level, sinasabi lang na mas mataas or mas grabe ang action sa ginawa. Pero yung number of times, meron din po tayong may gradation din ng penalties pag recidivist, pag paulit-ulit. So, for example, in one case, in the first degree may dalawa kang kaso of catcalling. That's still first degree lang. Pero kung pwede rin na in your case, nag-catcall ka twice, and then meron kang pinching and touching. So in the case, pwede kang ma-hold liable for two first degree offenses, and doon sa kabila naman, sa isang naman, pwede ka rin in third degree. So hindi yung degree is not on the repetitiveness, but on the degree of severity of the action.
Okay, thank you po, Attorney Angel, and thank you very much for all your questions, and Attorney Angel for answering all of those. So you can also give your insights and knowledge po through our comment box. So meron po dito nag-share, sabi po ni Ms. Henrietta from SPD, sabi niya po, you can also seek legal assistance with the IVP, legal aid in your locality po. They accept cases even if you are gainfully employed. They conduct indigency tests po.
Yes, that's true po. Pagka meron po mga nagvo-volunteer na yung mga nag-retired na lawyer. Meron din po sa IBP. Tama po si ma'am. Kasi IBP po, parang isang advocate din siya. Parang like Gabriela or the iba-ibang women's protection desk. In the private sector. Meron din nga sa UPILO. Pwede rin po. That's correct po.
Okay, maraming salamat po. Now, let's proceed to our giving of Certificate of Appreciation for our speaker to be awarded by Dr. Elizabeth A. Fontanilla.
Yeah. We're happy to give the Certificate of Appreciation. It reads Republic of the Philippines, Department of Science and Technology, General Santos Avenue, Bicutan, Taguig City awards this Certificate of Appreciation to Attorney Angeli Medali Alviar, Chief of the Legal Division, DOST, in grateful appreciation and recognition of her expertise as resource person during the 18-day campaign to end VAW, online orientation of the Safe Spaces Act on December 7, 2020 via online conferencing. Signed, yours truly, for ALS, GRSS, and DOST-wide God focal person. Thank you, Attorney Angel, for your time and your sharing. It's very, very significant and very useful and very informative for all of us. We learned so much about your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you rin po for inviting me.
Sa uulitin.
Friday po, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much po, Attorney Angel and Director Fontanilla. Now, let's proceed to our program. We will not end this session by having a simple closing remarks dahil iba tayo dito sa DOST GAD. We will do something different today. We encourage all participants to make an internal assessment of what we have learned and commit on this day to stand for a vow-free agency. Vow-free DOST and vow-free Philippines. Before we declare our commitment, which will be shown later on the screen, we will first watch a video on vow-free Philippines to inspire and motivate us more. The reading of our commitment is going to be led by Dr. Fontanilla.
Harapin mo ang bukas ng
upon Dr. Fontanilla to lead the reading of the commitment.
We want to make this event extra significant, memorable, and enduring for all of us. So I would like to request all our participants to open their camera only, not audio, to avoid the feedback. Let's all open our camera, to raise our right hand, and to read with me our joint commitment to end vow. We are staunch advocates of anti-VAW-C. We will continue to provide and improve our services for our clients so that they can live a life that is free from VAW. End VAW now. It's our duty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fontanilla, for leading us in the commitment. And that is all for our online orientation on the Safe Spaces Act. Thank you everyone for your eagerness to participate actively throughout the session. Thank you also to Attorney Angel for teaching us today, for conducting the discussion. And may I remind all of you to answer our online evaluation form provided in our chat box. The recorded version of this webinar will be posted in the DOST page. I am Camille Carandang, your host for today. Thank you, everyone, and see you in our next webinars to come. God bless.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations,
Everyone.
Director Beth, Attorney Angel.
Thank you, Asek Dayan.
Ma'am, pag may questions pa rin sila, nahihiya silang itanong dito, they can always email us. Baka may mga guidance na kailangan. We are always open and we welcome any queries or requests for assistance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Salamat po. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Sa ulitin.
Salamat po sa 80 participants.
85.
85, 87 po. Salamat. The picture taking was done po nung tayo po ay nagkaroon ng commitment. So, okay na po.
Fe. Later na lang, Fe.
Hindi, tinanggal, ano namin,
We
sorry.
still have. Oo.
Sandali.
Okay na po.
Ma'am,
Finally.
kami tayo na lang 5.
Finally. Ang tagal nila umalis ha, in fairness.
Bakit
Ma'am,
gusto
yung
mo?
iba kasi yan, ma'am.
Ha?
Yung iba kasi nagpa-play lang sa background pero hindi talaga sila nag-attend.
Parang
ganun.
hintay lang nila po mag-end yung meeting.
Okay. Pero at least,
Oo. Oo. So very good, very good. Ano maganda ba yung flow? I think okay naman. Except
Yeah.
ako nag-zoom in out ako eh. Kasi 3 times ako na-disconnect. But anyway, mukhang okay naman yung flow natin.
yep.
Ang ganda ng discussion. Very informative yung kay Attorney Angel. Mukhang if we allow them, marami pa yan mga questions.
Nga po. Nag-last question na
Iba
lang
dyan,
po.
nahihiya lang siguro usually.
Opo.
Ano no?
Nahiya lang yun, ma'am. Sa oras din kasi.
So,
almost
thank you.
ano na, 12.
Oo. At saka, medyo hindi na confine ni Angel to 1 hour yung kanyang ano, no?
Hindi.
Kasi yung kanyang ano, hindi niya na-confine to 1 hour. Oo,
Siguro, ma'am,
medyo mahaba nga yung kanyang.
Sa presentation niya sa Gadfocal, gawin natin mag-focus siya sa employees. Employees ang ano niya, ma'am, para...
Hindi, nag-focus siya sa workplaces. Kasi hindi naman tayo full setting eh. Although, yung mga palagay ko yung sa mga campuses, di ba kasama natin?
Yeah.
O hindi?
Kasama
Di ba
po.
meron silang slots? Oo. So baka interesado rin sila, baka yung student, faculty, baka relevant sa kanila yun eh.
Opo.
Ako, ano po, ano ba? Kung kanina po kasi.
Sige po.
Oo. Bakit hindi na lang kayo treat yourselves to lunch? Pwede naman yun, di ba, Fe?
May baon kami.
May baon kayo? Kasi di ba meron naman
Baon
yung
kami.
we can charge it. Okay.
Mamaya na lang.
Oo.
Baka lagpas na kami sa oras.
Hindi. Kasi sa preparation nga. Hindi. Pwede natin pwede natin i-charge yan. May ano pa naman. I'm sure meron pa naman.
Ano kami ng Jollibee. Jollibee pa?
Oo, sige. Oo.
Pa-deliver na lang kami, ma'am.
Oo, sige. Oo. Thank you.
Thank you po, ma'am.
So, Faye, yung ating ano sa 10, ha? Yung shooting natin sa 10.
Oh, ayusin. Ma'am, may isang in-email ko po yung final LIB paki-sign para mabalik. Sorry.
Sign na naman.
Final. Hinihingi na po. Ma'am.
Anong problema ni NRCP doon?
Ay, ginawa lang niyang itemized, ma'am. Yung 239, ginawa niyang itemized. So,
Pag sila...
may mga, supplies. Ganun po, ma'am.
Oo, sige. Sige. Bubuksan ko ngayon yung aking Ay, nakabukas naman na ako eh.
Sige po, ma'am.
Sige. Okay, sige. Thank you sa inyo. Thank you. Mukhang nagiging na tayo? Nagiging proficient na si Danica at saka si Camille.
Professional na po.
Nagiging proficient na, no? Konting practice pa, di ba?
Why not?
Kailangan ma-expose. Nakalimutan natin mag-thank you pala kay Mike. Very nice yung prayer ni Mike.
Sir Mike daw po.
Oo, si Mike at saka si Si Mike
Oo, isama mo si Mike.
Ma'am. Si Ruel.
Isama mo isama mo sa lunch. Oo, pag-order ka, kahit para naman. Counting thank you lang yan, ha?
Iba ko, di ba? Sayang mo. Mamaya, ma'am.
Si Angel wala dyan eh. Nasa bahay si Angel, di ba?
Wala sa bahay.
Oo.
I-roll natin.
Pa-deliver na lang po kami.
Pa-deliver na lang kayo. Thank you kay Danica, kay Camille. Na-expose na yung talent mo, Camille, ha? Thank you, Fe. Thank you, Fe. Okay. Ha?
Ikaw rin.
At chuwari-wari-wat lang ako.
Chuwari-wari.
Sige, thank you. Bye-bye.